Welcome back to the Centered on Buffalo podcast. We're joined by Connor McGovern, offensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills. Connor, welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you for having me, Eric. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. How's the offseason going so far?
It's going well. Had a couple trips. Been working out, doing PT most of the time, so we're good. At a nice weight spot for weight-wise, so we're good to go.
Nice. Where were the trips to?
So did a couple trips, then down to Florida, down to Tennessee. I was just down in Louisville recently for a bachelor party, and then got a couple more trips planned before OTA start.
Dude, I'm down in Louisville. You should have hit me up. I could have
I didn't even
helped
think
out.
of it.
Was
Yeah,
it
we took a couple tours. Saw some places. Went to Buffalo Trace for a tour. Went over Woodford Reserve, a couple places. Got some good bourbons to bring back.
Yeah, it's amazing that Louisville's become this like hot bachelor party spot just solely based upon the bourbon right now. We got Derby and PGA Championship coming up, so we got a couple big events coming up, but that bourbon trail's been hot. I actually recommended to Josh this year, maybe I don't want to spoil a surprise for next year, but I recommended to Josh this year to maybe buy a barrel of bourbon and have it named after the offensive line. You guys get to go pick it out and then bottle it up for you guys. So maybe that'll
Oh,
be coming next year for you guys.
sign me up for that. I would love that.
Did
Especially put
you?
it down in my bar. That would be awesome.
No doubt. Did you guys take an offensive line trip after the season?
Yeah, we went down to Miami, down the Fort Lauderdale area. So that was a lot of fun.
Did Dion get to call the shots to bring you all down there?
I think Mitch did more of the shots. I know at first we talked about doing a cruise and things fell through. Guys were doing different trips, but we ended up setting on Miami. I think Dion had a big plan with that just because he lives down there, so he wanted to be close to home. But we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Those on O-line trips were always good. We used to do Vegas a bunch, and then
Yep.
eventually we settled into Key West because we're like, okay, we go out to Vegas and they rope you when you have 10
Oh,
big dudes ready to go into a club, and we didn't even really want to be at the club anyways. And then by the end of the night, you're out 5 or 10 grand. It's like, okay, let's go down to Key West. We'll listen to some live music, chill out by the water all day, go out on a boat. So
yeah,
that
that's
was
a
much
perfect
more my
vibe right
speed.
there.
Yeah, no doubt
Yeah,
about it.
because
It's like
Vegas, one time you do it, then you're good after that. Every other time, you're like, oh, we're scheduled for 3-4 days. After the first night, you're like, I'm ready to go home. You're up till 5 a.m. You're up again at 7, just ready to gamble. It's just tiring. So it was a nice change of pace this year.
yeah, for sure. How's the body feeling?
Feels great. This is the best I felt in the offseason in my 5 years.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing that it doesn't work out this way for everybody, but you learn how to manage your body better during the season and even in the off season to where my career ended with a neck injury after year 9, but heading into that off season, I felt as good as I had throughout any season throughout my career, and that was the oldest I'd been at that point.
Yeah,
It's wild how you
it's
how you
crazy.
learn to manage that. Looking back, with your time with the Cowboys, how valuable was it for you to join an offensive line that had guys like Zach Martin and Travis Frederick and Tyron Smith on it?
Oh, it was great. Like, I remember back in college, like, we would always watch film of the Cowboys, like the 2015, 2016 guys. And then all of a sudden in 2019, I get drafted there. It was like almost being like heaven. You're like, you get to learn from these guys every single day. And they all took me under their wing. Like, when I got drafted there, I was drafted as a center. So I learned a lot from Travis. And then when the new coaching staff came in, I got moved to guard. And Zach Martin took me under his wing. So just getting to learn from those guys for my first 4 years of careers made the trip to Buffalo so much easier.
Yeah, so I knew all those guys personally. Zach's cousin was one of my roommates in college. Travis and Tyron were both athletes first guys, so I knew all those guys. It's amazing how different all three of their personalities are, and
Yes.
and, and that's just like that's any offensive line, but it's amazing. Like Travis is the cerebral type. Like I don't want to say he doesn't care about football, but he's not
He's
like
just so smart. Like, he sees something once and it's stuck in his mind forever. Like, I've never seen someone like just so gifted, smart like that, and just like he has so many other interests, and he's just great at everything he does. Like, I know he started up while he had his own side business while he was like in his later years of his career. Like, he was building like a D&D website. Just so many other things. He had so many things going on, but he was just great at everything he did.
right. And then you got Zach, who's extremely gifted, interior offensive lineman, never gets beat. Just something like more. He has more. What was it? He has like
He has more years played in the league than he does
yes,
holding calls. It's absolutely insane.
that's
I,
what it was.
I think it was my last year there, my 4th year. He got his like 5th holding call in his entire career, and like at that time it was year 9 for him.
Right. And
It
then
was
you had
absolutely insane. And like I've never seen someone analyze a holding call so much. It was like it was late in the game. It was kind of it could have gone either way, but he was fighting that left and right. I was like, Zach, it's okay. Most guys get that many holding calls in 1 year, and this is your fifth in how many years?
Yeah, and then you got Tyron, just like built like a Greek god out there. I've mentioned on the podcast before, but Jameis Winston, I remember him seeing Tyron Smith in the pool out at the Pro Bowl when it was out in Hawaii, and he looked at Tyron. He's like, "Wait, why am I fatter than one of my offensive linemen
Yeah,
in this game?" And so,
just built in a lab.
yeah, no doubt
Like
about it.
freakishly long arms, everything you want in a prototypical left tackle. That's Tyron, and just
Yeah.
the most quiet human being you'll ever meet too.
Yeah. Yeah, great dude too. So when you go, so you come up to Buffalo in free agency this year. Obviously, different level of heat in training camp. How tough was it down in Texas when you're dealing with that training camp heat down there?
So luckily, the Cowboys got the Oxnard in California,
That's
so it's
right.
right above Malibu. So weather's perfect. Like, it might go up in the 70s, maybe once or twice during the time you're out there in the 80s. But there's always that constant ocean breeze, so it's not too bad. But in 20 during COVID, we had to stay in Texas. That was brutal. I remember the worst day. It was 118 degrees at one practice, and guys were just dropping like flies. Like every 20 minutes, you have to go into like a cooling tent just to cool down. As soon as you're done with practice, jumping right in the ice tubs. It was it was brutal.
I forgot you guys did training camp out in California. I'm glad you circled it back to that COVID year, else that was going to be a really dumb question on my end.
Oh,
But
don't worry.
I always look when you go to Buffalo and you love it, you learn to defend it. And one of the things is like, dude, our training camps are beautiful. You know, St.
Oh,
John
yes.
Fisher is great, the weather's great, and all that. So I thought that was going to be one way you'd be like, yeah, look how much better it is in Buffalo.
And
But
I will say it was very nice. Like I always think about that 1 year during COVID. It ruined like heat for me forever. I was like, I want to get out of the South and go back up north.
yeah,
And I think we had one day that was over like 80 some degrees in St. John Fisher. It was like 85. It was hot, but then I think again, I was like, it wasn't that hot, so we're good to go.
yeah, no doubt about it. So this offseason, I know it's tough with Mitch being let
Yeah.
go, but you get to slide into the pivot. And I played center in college. I was drafted by the Bills in the first round. They moved me to guard, but I couldn't wait to get back to center.
Yep.
I've heard you say, and I've read that you're excited to get back in the pivot. So when you got that news, like, hey, we're going to move you inside, even though it's at the, I don't want to say at the expense of Mitch because those are
Yeah.
separate
Mhm.
decisions, and it's always tough to see your brother go. But how excited are you that you're going to get back to playing center?
Yeah, I was very excited. I knew from the beginning coming here, eventually, like once Mitch either retired or anything happened, this was the last thing we saw coming, especially with some of the other moves that happened this offseason. Didn't think Mitch was going to be, we didn't think it was going to be like how we assumed eventually he would be retired. Like, obviously, we didn't think
Right.
he would be gone like this. But I was very excited for the opportunity. Me and Kromer actually talked about it at the end of the season in our final meeting, just about all different situations that could happen. And I knew within the year or two that I'll be going to center. And if anything ever happened to Mitch this year, if he was still here, I would be our backup center. So kind of expected it, but not in the way it happened.
Yeah, I know. It stinks the way that worked out, but ultimately, when you're like when you want to play center, when you're used to playing center, it's like as soon as you can get back to it, the better.
Yeah.
And
It's
it's
just natural going back to it. Like I've always
exactly.
like when I was back up my last year in Dallas at center, like I got 2 or 3 games of playing it, and I would go months at a time without taking a snap, and it was just felt second nature again. Just getting back under and just snapping the ball, like your feet are neutral. Just all that just feels very comfortable.
I know. I spent so much time in that summer, my rookie year, just I didn't know which guard spot I was going to be playing. So I'm working in a left-handed stance for the first time. And then I ended up playing at right guard. We went into a preseason game. I had never faced a 3-4 defense because we ran a 4-3 in practice. I have Cullen Jenkins when he was playing
Yeah,
for Green Bay at the time, screaming down on me from a five technique. There's like 4 yards of separation before he finally makes a move on me. And I was like,
you're like, what do
okay,
I do with all this separation right here? Like, there's so much movement. I'm used to have a guy right on top of me.
I know, like give me back the center as quick as possible. How have you liked working with Kromer in Buffalo?
I've loved it. I'll say it definitely changed up my game this year. Like, sat me down day one. He's like, we're gonna try different techniques with you. He's like, He's like, let me know the response, what you like about it. He's like, but we want to like be more aggressive. Like he watched all my film, and basically in Dallas, I was setting back, just confirm the pocket. But Kromer looked at all my tape and he's like, I think you'll be the best if you jump set just about everything and use your strengths to your advantage. And it probably took me a good solid month. Got in OTAs. Probably by training camp, I was feeling more comfortable. And by the season, a couple weeks in, started following his technique more and more, bought fully in, and I felt best I've ever had in my entire career.
Yeah, Kromer's got his. I used to call him his ninja tricks, where you're like grabbing linebackers by the back of their hip and swinging them through and all
Yeah,
that. But
or
I
getting the
learned,
arm over, just pulling them just gently so you're not getting called for it. Don't ever look back at the ref type things. And it's just
yep,
things you don't think about, and it just it just helps so many different guys. Like you see all five of us we do different things. Like Dion, like we saw last year how wide our splits were. It's just
right.
work on each one of our like strengths, and he does a great job of building the offense around that. Like you saw all the tackle pulls we did last year. Like me and Saibo can pin the three tech on the backside and allow the tackles to get through. And just Mitch was so good at getting up through the gaps and getting that backside linebacker. And he saw all that and just worked to all our strengths.
Yeah, I think that's one of the best things about Cromer is he's willing to just adapt to each individual offensive lineman. It doesn't have to fit in this mold of this
Yep,
is what a tackle does, or this is what a guard does, or a center. He'll mold kind of the playbook or the scheme and the technique to your game. And I always
exactly.
appreciate that about him. You talked about Dion splits. I was talking to a couple of my former teammates and guys. Rodney Hudson was in town last night. Lee Smith. The U of L Pro Day was today, and they were helping
Yeah,
out the center Brian Hudson for Louisville, who's training to be in the draft. And we were talking about the a player's split can often indicate how confident they are as a player.
yeah.
You're not willing to take a big split unless you're confident. Dion Dawkins certainly does not lack
Yep. And
confidence
you
out
have to trust
there.
the guy next to you too. Like I was looking back through a couple pictures from the season, and you could just see like it was times it was like a 3 yard split between us. It was absolutely insane. But he trusts me next to him, and he knows he could be comfortable, and he could go one on one with anyone in the league, and he just loved that confidence out of him.
Yeah, for sure. Quick shout out to Prime, sponsor of the podcast, number one sports drink on the planet. Go get you some today. All right, so I got to ask you this, and I read this about you. You know, you measured at 6'5" at the combine.
Yep.
Now you're listed at 6'6". Did you truly grow an inch, or were they off on the measurement at the combine?
I think I actually grew because during college my nutrition was bad, didn't sleep right. I think those couple months of truly sleeping right, eating healthy, that allowed me to grow that little over final inch. Because I think when I first got out of Citrus Bowl and measured the first day, I was 6'5" even, and that's who I was my entire career at Penn State, 6'5" even. Then also I get to the combine, I'm 6'5" and a half. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So we get back to Exos and measure 6'5" and a half. A few weeks later is my pro day. I'm 6'5" and 3/4. I'm like, oh, I like the direction it's going, but I was like, maybe it's just Penn State giving me an extra quarter of an inch, whatnot. I go back to Exos for final training sessions, and now I'm 6'6" even. I was like, are you guys lying to me, or is this actually true? And I was 6'6", and then I think I had like 9 or 10 like of like the official visits, like you fly out to them, and every single one of them I was over 6'6". I was like, this is legitimate then.
Yeah, that's wild. That's wild.
Yeah.
Generally, you're not growing an inch at that time, but
Yeah.
worked out
But
to
I
your
guess I
advantage.
was 20 years old, just turned 21. So I had that just final growth spurt.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt about it. Do you feel like because oftentimes the center will be the shortest amongst
Hmm.
the bunch, and you could kind of get away without having some length in there, but throughout the rest of the offensive line, the more length, the better. Do you feel like your length on the interior gives you an advantage there?
Yeah, I definitely think so. Like, especially with the offhand, just being able to just keep that guy off just a couple inches further away just makes a huge difference and gives you time to get that second strike in. And I think that'll give me more advantage than most like shorter centers have.
Yeah, for sure. When you go into a game, would you rather go against like a bigger, thicker, stronger defensive tackle or a smaller, quicker guy?
It all depends on I think the game. I would prefer someone that's trying to go right through my face, so I could just get my hands on him quickly and sit down on the bull rush. That's just personally. I know a lot of guys don't like that, but I don't mind at all. But I think if I could get my hands on anyone, I could slow him down. But I would definitely rather the guy that's just trying to run right through me.
Yeah, I would say the same, and it's funny because defensive tackles like Aaron Donald, for instance, they'll slip in the draft because of their size, or even an
Yeah,
Ed Oliver will slip in the draft because of their size. And if you ask offensive linemen, now I understand a GM has to be careful drafting an undersized defensive lineman because
yeah,
if he doesn't work out, then you look like an absolute fool.
exactly.
But I think about the Dwight Freeney's, one of my college teammates, Elvis Doomerville, set the sack record in college, falls to the third round, then has a 10-year career, multiple Pro Bowls. It's like
Yep.
sometimes having that little extra leverage and quickness
Oh,
on
the
that
leverage
defensive
is,
line.
yeah, when they're like that, right around the 6 foot, maybe a little bit under. That's because they could come off and still get underneath you, but they have that quickness that you got to really jump out there. But then they get you to turn your hips quickly, and so those are always the hardest, the shorter guys.
Yeah, I remember we played the Bengals. It was probably my third year in the NFL, I guess. Maybe second because I was still playing guard at that point of the season. And their backup defensive tackle was one of their third rounders, Geno Atkins. And he was like 6 foot, 6'1". And we hadn't seen him a whole lot on tape. It's early in the season. And he comes in, maybe second series of the game, and he literally picks me up off my feet, like not like carried me back, but
Yeah,
to where both my feet were off the ground at one point, and we got to the sideline afterwards. I was like, "Hey guys, number 97, watch out
he's the
because
real deal.
the other two guys were big slugs, and they were the starters, and they were the guys we watched film
Yeah.
on." And I was like, "Dude, when 97 gets in the game, watch out for him." I understand that. Well, looking back, like obviously he ended up being an All Pro player, but at the time we didn't know anything about him,
And
and we're
that's
like,
always the worst when you're like, who is this guy? And then he's just winning every single rep.
Dude, people ask me all the time. They're like, "Who's the hardest guy you had to block during your NFL career?" And I'm like, "A bunch of people you've probably never heard of
Yeah.
because we didn't have as much film on them. They were likely just dying to get paid, and so they come into a game, they try their absolute hardest, all
Yep.
75 plays, and then they just give you hell." But we did have Paul Solia, who was about 365 one year, and he got paid. He coming out of Miami, he ended up getting paid by the Falcons, but for one year, he gave it everything and he had, and he was a nightmare in the division. But it's generally like the guys you haven't necessarily heard of, they're the dudes that like give you fits throughout the
Oh yeah.
season because you don't know anything about them.
Yeah, especially like that first week when like none of the starters are playing like in the preseason, and it's like, all right, what is going on? Or they might have been on a different team the prior year, so you're trying to watch old film when they're in a new situation, like a new defense. Those are always the worst because you just don't know what to expect.
Yeah, we had Rex Ryan come to the Bills. He was with the Jets the previous year. One of the guys on their practice squad was Damon Harrison. Well, Damon Harrison ends up being the highest paid nose guard in the league at one
Yep.
point. But I got to go against him the first game of the season that year, and Rex is like, "This dude's a slug. You're gonna crush him. He's terrible. He was lazy last year." And dude, he was a nightmare. I came to the
Whole
sideline.
new person.
I cussed Rex out after the first series of the game. I was like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "No, no, that I'm telling you, he'll quit. He'll quit." And 16 games later, he becomes the highest paid nose guard in the entire NFL. So it's like, and I'll bring that guy up at like speaking gigs when people ask me, and they're like, "Who? Like, why wouldn't it be Aaron
Yeah.
Donald or J.J. Watt?" I'm like, "Well, we know those guys. We're prepping for those guys. We're giving them double teams.
Yeah,
Like,
you're
yeah,
changing the game plan around those guys, and then you have someone else that's getting their one on one while all attention's focused on the other guys, and that's where usually the biggest battle's at.
yeah, for sure." So the Bills just picked up Austin Johnson. The Bills played against him at
Yep.
the Chargers last year. What kind of player is he?
Oh, he's a great player. You know, us Penn Staters, we play hard.
Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
I just missed out playing with him at Penn State, so he left the year before I got there. But all over when he was in Tennessee, everywhere, he's just like Daquan, just a hard worker. It's gonna be a great fit for the system. I think it's a great pickup.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Speaking of another Penn State guy, your boy Saquon now with the Eagles.
Yep.
So okay, so he's got these massive quads. Does the size of the quads match the weight room numbers? Like, is he super strong in the weight room too?
Oh, it's just freakishly strong. I remember at Penn State, like he's capped at certain weights. Like he wasn't allowed to go over certain numbers for a hang clean, power clean, squat because they didn't want to risk hurting himself. So like you
Yeah,
see all these videos, like other guys like doing 600 plus. Saquon was not allowed to go that high. Like because if him being a competitor, he would try to destroy all those numbers and didn't care about getting on the field. Like he wanted to beat all those numbers, but they had to keep him from himself from crushing everything. Because
that's
if
how.
you go back even now to like, and you see all the records up on the wall, it's just his name first, even for like overall compared to like all body sizes and body weights.
That's wild, especially as small as he is, and you think about all the huge dudes that he's going up against in the weight room. The strongest guy on our team when I was playing with the Bills was Richie Incognito, and they would do the same thing with him. They would be like, "No, Richie, you can't,
I've heard some stories.
squat over 6 plates on each side. You can't, on bench, whether it's incline or flat, you can't go over 4 plates on each side." And I'd be like incline bench struggling with like 315, and here's Richie just banging 405 for six.
Yep.
Like, come on, let me go up and wait. And they're like, no, no, no,
Yeah,
we got to
that's how I
protect
felt in
you.
Dallas. And I would be doing dumbbell incline to be like finish my last set at like 130, 135. Tyron Smith just comes out cold. He's like, all right, I'll start with that. Just easy flies through it. Or like bench max out there. He just comes in 405 right on the bar, reps out a couple times. Like, oh, that's fine. I'm like, I'm struggling over here, and you're just casually coming in cold and doing it.
What do you think of Ciano's off-season program with the Bills games and all that? Did you enjoy it last year?
I did the Iron Bills. That was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
especially like tug of war, dodgeball. He had all these fun games, but then he had some challenging ones, especially like the obstacle course or like the 500-meter bike sprints. I was not prepared for some of those. I only heard good things before coming in.
Yeah, the 500-meter bike sprint is an absolute grind. So for those listening, you have to or is it 500 calories, or does he do meters now?
I think it's meters because you have the three different bikes going at simultaneously, and
Yeah.
it's just you have to plan with your team. You put the big guys on one bike, and you have the small guy. It's truly brutal.
Yeah, yeah, we had guys falling out. So that was the first year they implemented that game when I was there, and it was an absolute nightmare. Guys were puking. People couldn't walk the next day because we
Yep.
were pushing ourselves so hard. But I guess they got out of us what they wanted to. They wanted us to push ourselves during that conditioning
It
session.
was a
So
true team bonding experience.
yeah, no doubt. Who's the strongest O lineman right now in the weight room?
In the weight room, it's just all different. Like Dion, no one's beating Dion in some of the leg things. You see those massive
Right.
casts he has. Like you're not coming close to anything like that. I'd just say there's like overall, I don't think there's one guy that stands out like head and shoulders above everyone. I'd say we all have our own thing. Like Cybo, like I've never seen someone with like hamstrings. Like the way he just walks around, that's how he stops the bull rush so easily. But I'll just say pound for pound, probably Spencer. I would say definitely Spencer Brown is probably pound for pound the strongest out of all of us, and
Really?
the most freakish athlete.
Yeah, at 6 foot. Is he 6'8" or 6'9"?
I think he's more close to 6'9", but he when you're that tall, it doesn't even matter. Like he just says, "Oh, I'm just tall." It-
Right, but for me, like that doesn't help you necessarily in the weight room to be that
yeah,
tall. So it's impressive that you
he
give him the
moves
all
some weight
around.
around too. And like
Yeah,
you look at him, you're like, "Oh, he's probably like 290, 295, soaking wet." He's like 312.
right. Yeah, he's fit. He can move, and both those tackles can pull and
Yeah,
run, as you mentioned earlier. All right, last one from me. I was talking to Kromer earlier today, and he was like, "Dude, you got to ask Connor
I
about
already know this is going.
the pizza parties, the
Yep.
pizza party." So, when did you have you always been into cooking?
No, I would say I really started like getting into cooking like towards the end of my college career, like my rookie year, just when I started taking nutrition. More importantly, uh, when I got drafted down in Texas, the pizzas in Dallas sucked, and I come from a good area. Grew up with good pizza, so during COVID, I was like, I'm gonna learn how to make my own. So I started making my own dough, sauce, just started tinkering it, and then for about 2 years, tried to perfect my recipe before I finally had people over to try it. I think I went through like 18 different recipes before I finally had someone else try my pizza before, like only before that was my wife trying it. So I had a couple guys over and they absolutely loved it. And then that turned into like every few weeks we would have like a couple of offensive linemen over, their wives or girlfriends, just for a small gathering. And then when I signed here, all the guys down in Dallas were like, you got to have one last pizza party. Probably like 15, 20 people there, had one last big bang. I got here, I told guys I could cook, and they didn't believe me. They're like, all right, if you're such a good cook, why don't you have everyone over? I was like, all right, the house is being finished. Don't want to put that all on my wife right now. Having guys over, well, the kitchen isn't ready. So probably it was about week 7 or 8. I'm like, all right, me and Osiris, because he likes to cook also, we're talking about something. And Dion just stops. He goes, shut up, Connor. And I'm like, what? He goes, you can't talk about cooking anymore until you cook for us. I was like, all right, challenge accepted. I'll make pizza for you.
It's like Step Brothers. You can't talk
Yeah,
about how good you could sing till we hear it.
exactly. And then it was the second time we played the Jets. It was that week. It was the Friday night because you have to do it after weigh-ins. Weigh-ins are Friday. Just
Right.
mandatory. You don't want anyone overweight. We take that very seriously on the O-line. So it came Friday night. I think we had everyone from the O-line. Kromer came. Our assistant O-line coach, Austin, came. Everyone brought their wives, girlfriends. So there's probably about like 22, 23 people. And we went through, I think, 15 pizzas that night, a couple calzones, Detroit-style pizzas. We made appetizers, and everyone loved it. So then we end up winning. And so they're like, all right, we got to do it again.
Yeah, got to
And
run
me
it
being
back.
naive, I was like, all right, I could do it again. And then I think the next week or the week after, whatever it was, we did another one and we won again. And then it happened like 2 weeks later, then we were 3-0 on pizza parties. So then it just kept going. I think by the end of the year, we were 6-1 off pizza parties.
That's
So
awesome.
then now that's carried over. Like everyone in the offseason is like, all right, as soon as we get back, the OTAs, we're having another pizza party. So we're already planning out pizza parties into this year. So I'm already stocking up on the flour, everything we need.
I love it. I love it. I'm gonna con myself in an invite to one of
Oh,
those
you're
anytime when I'm
more
up.
than welcome this year.
I
And we have,
appreciate that.
let
I
me know
also
which games you're coming up to. Well, it's always Friday night. Usually every other week we do it, but you're more than welcome to come.
My man, I appreciate that. I also own part of a seasoning company, so we'll send you a shipment
Oh,
here shortly. One of the seasonings is the Dano's Original, which is
yep.
like the original spices mixed with Parmesan cheese. It's great on Italian
Oh,
food. So we'll
that'll be good.
we'll get that done. We'll send you
Yeah,
a
because I got a
package.
couple new things coming for this year. So we always start with appetizers, and I think that'll be on one of the new recipes, doing like a almost like a pizza puff, almost like a cupcake full, like that's a cupcake that's a pizza. I think that'll be good on top of it.
Dude, that'd be legit. That
Hmm.
would be legit. Hey, I appreciate the time, brother. Thank you
Of
for hopping on
course,
the podcast. We'll have to do it again at some point. Have a great rest of the off season.
maybe we
Thank
could do a
you,
live one from a pizza party this year.
dude. That is a must. That is a must. We will get that done for sure. I appreciate you, brother.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me.